Thank you very much. I'm going to be what Abubakar was referring to as the senior folk with some wisdom to talk to the youth today. So thanks for that nice intro. I just want to echo Abubakar's talk about this conference and the vision for this conference. And the thing is, as a parent who has youth, Somali youth in the diaspora, this is a timely conference. This is a needed conference. And I'm really impressed at how we were for months and months trying to engage youth to really take the leadership on planning this, brainstorming it, and pulling it together and making it relevant for youth. So it is for youth, by youth, and definitely some of us were in the background helping. So I'm happy also to underline the building of alliances, the building of connections that are going to have effective networking to resolve things and to really learn from one another. Because at the end of the day, whether we are in the streets of London, UK, or Vancouver, or here in Minnesota or DC, what the Somali diaspora youth are going through seem to be having some similarities. And if we build strong coalitions and alliances that work together and learn from experiences and share those lessons, we can really benefit. Now to my topic. I wanted to talk about youth integration and try and bring some thinking over the years and also some research. And a word about integration. It is really a very dear topic to my heart as a mother, an immigrant mother raising kids, and as an independent researcher who is really entrenched in social justice literature. Having been asked to talk about this allowed me an opportunity to sort of glimpse at integration, as it is an interesting and complex and layered topic, because it links particularly immigrants' experiences from the old country into the new societies. But the overarching piece for me is to really engage the young folk in the room in thinking and having some maybe meaningful discussion over the next 2 days to critically examine and reflect on some of the aspects and some of the issues that help smooth integration and some of the things that actually hinder smooth integration. And I'll share what I have thought through as I kind of did a short research for this one. But also learn from you guys, so it's not just giving you everything that you don't know, but it's just maybe getting you to think and learning from your experiences as well. A note to start with, I'm talking about integration and not assimilation. So assimilation to me is maybe not healthy. Integration is much more healthier, because if you mix two colors and things get absorbed, you don't want too much absorption. What you want is to sort of cross-fertilize and come up with something that is enriched as opposed to one being replaced by the other. So I like integration better. But there are a host of issues that impact integration into a new environment, and some of them are external. And when I use external, I mean external to maybe the host environment that you came into. As a Somali community or an Italian community or an Egyptian community coming into the US, the issues that are present in the host society will be external to you as a new immigrant. So external issues that are in the host environment, and some internal issues where I'm using internal here, the internal things that we come with as immigrants, our culture, and all the other things that we come with. So we're going to look at integration in the host society, keeping in mind those external, internal pieces. tried to find a definition for integration the other day when I was thinking about this speak today. And there are several. There's mathematics one, where you talk about particles and integral parts and things like that. But there's also a sociology one that talks about integration being as an act or an instance of integrating a racial, religious, or ethnic groups. There's a psychology definition that talks about the organization of the constituent elements of the personality into a coordinated, harmonious whole. That is very interesting because to me, integration is, even if you take two cultures, you need to kind of have two wholes integrating and maybe becoming another yet whole. So if one of the wholes that are being integrated is fragmented, you can think about how that, impacts. There's a psychoanalysis definition as well, for the psychologists in the room. The process by which a well-balanced psyche becomes whole as the developing ego organizes the id. Fascinating psychoanalytical piece there. But these all various definitions speak to the complexity and the layering and the pieces that we need to think about as we think through integration at a very sort of not messy reality fluid piece, but concretely in terms of thinking. Now, thinking about the impacts and the things that impact migration into a new environment, and maybe this is where Guled was saying, make sure that your topic is really relevant to the youth. Some of you were born here. Some of us migrated here. So I want to qualify that. But even those of you Somali youth who were born in the diaspora live with parents who migrated. So these issues are at home, even if you were born in North America or Europe. One of the things that we bring with us, some of us, not all of us, is a refugee experience, which is really in itself a topic that needs to be really researched well. Most of the Somalis in the diaspora are refugees. So even if the kids were born here, you're living with parents who became refugees, and that has a psychosocial impact that can last for a long time. But you also have religion, cultural differences with host countries. Another piece that, even though some of you might not have been victimized by the Somali civil war, that impacts the family unit that you live in is the protracted Somali civil war. So these are all some things that I can categorize as internal issues that we Somalis and Somali community bring into the integration process. Now you can think about that in terms of what helps, what hinders integration when you really unpack that. What aspects of the internal factors that I just mentioned of the Somali communities in the diaspora are actually hindering integration? So this is for the youth to think through this, and all of us. And Somalis particularly, we need to kind of reflect and unpack all these underlying things that we're coming in with. Looking a little bit outside of ourselves and looking into the host environments, fascinating piece to really consider is diversity. We Somalis are now agreeing somewhat that we're not really all that homogeneous as we were to believe in the 50s with the heyday of nation building in Africa. Diversity is everywhere, but diversity in the diaspora is really much more prominent. And when you think about integration, you need to think through diversity in the sense of multiplicity, especially for young folk. It can be confusing. Okay? Many religions, many languages, many cultures, many colors, you name it, there is multiplicity, and it can be really confusing for people, or maybe not. But for some of us who came from somewhat homogeneous regions of the globe, it is a learning curve when you are in a diverse society. So diversity is one thing, but there is also, North America, Europe, there is systemic barriers and systemic racism, to be specific, that impact integration, that impact education, that impact employment and other life opportunities. And we need to name it. We need to say this exists. Okay, there is systemic racism. Nowhere is society perfect. So we need to talk about that. Just one note on diversity. I know Gulad is going to keep strict time. But it's confusing, maybe not for the college or high school level students, but for young kids in grade school, grade 1 to 4, multiplicity can be difficult, especially if at the kitchen table, every parent is telling them your culture is at the top, everybody else's is, and diversity is really presented to kids in a hierarchical way. When we know better, that we should start talking to these kids at a very young age because they do get along in the schoolyards. Hello, okay. That was fast. Okay, I should speak up, okay. And really a difficult experience for kids because I was in a school where a grade 5 student asked, it was a Catholic public school, and a grade 5 student asked his teacher, who was teaching Catholicism, if God spoke Spanish. And the teacher said, yeah, God speaks Spanish, English, every language. The kid goes home for the weekend, gets into the project, gets into a fight, comes with bruises Monday. This is a grade 4 kid. And what happened on the weekend? Well, this was a Spanish-speaking kid. Said he was at the basketball court at the neighborhood, fought with Somali kids and Lebanese kids who said, no, God speaks only Arabic and Somali. Does not speak English. So diversity is a reality that those of us who know who we are can deal with. For young folks, it is confusing as hell. So we need to, as parents, as role models, as mentors, need to be really clear at deconstructing this very kitchen table discussions that present diversity in a very hierarchical way. That confuses the kids. So what I am leading to then is, for those of you that, okay, I think I'm going to need more than 1 minute, please. Okay. For those of you, the other thing that you need to deal with as you are integrating into host societies, or were born into, is the notion of becoming a Somali person in the diaspora. Some of us came knowing that we were Somali. We grew up in Somalia. We were over 18 when we left. We knew who we were. But the challenge that really, in terms of integration, is becoming Somali in a multicultural, multilingual, multiracial, diverse society. Becoming Somali is really layered then with challenges and opportunities. Both external and internal barriers, but also internal, external opportunities that impact all at once, because life happens simultaneously. It is not discrete. It doesn't come in sequence. You're growing up. You get one shot at it. You're supposed to figure out who you are in this very challenging, unfolding reality. So you need to kind of piece that together. Constant renegotiation and negotiation of who you are, identity, cultural identity, religious identity, in a context of not only diversity, but also oppressions and intersecting oppressions, all right? So you are a black youth, male, female, so there is gender oppression, there is socioeconomic oppression, there is racial oppression, there is education, there is employment, there's socioeconomic status. So all these things are all intersecting at the same time as you are growing up and figuring out who you are. Hindering factors, becoming the person that you want to be and potential that you have, while really dealing with maybe the experience of the refugees from your parents, the unresolved Somali civil war. It's a bleeding wound for all of us. Those of you maybe have not been victimized that are here, but we still have cousins, brothers, relatives dying, and a very unsettled situation. Constantly listening to the stories of that Somali civil war from the parents. Parents who had to become the backbone of a country that collapsed while raising you guys in the diaspora. So it's really all interlinked. A note on just migration. I talked about the refugee experience and I talked about immigrants, but migration doesn't really mean that everybody's got baggages. Although, according to Charles Figley, who talks about migration, not just refugees, but people who decide to migrate. Migration is a condition for risk for developing, and this is a quote, for mental health disorder. But the risk is not a destiny. We need to be very clear. Some migrants under certain conditions become mentally ill. However, differences in personal characteristics or in the social situations in which migrants find themselves are more predictors of mental health illness than migration per se. What this says is, and I did a lot of research with the Canadian Mental Health Association's Ottawa chapter in terms of looking at refugees and looking at some psychosocial traumas. But what this says is there are other factors as well. If you come in as an immigrant, not even a refugee with a baggage, and coming into a recession or in the middle of economic crisis as we have today, there's going to be very unfavorable conditions. And those are going to perpetuate some of the hindrances of integration. So also differences in culture can mean some isolation for some folk while adapting to new culture, or while trying to, for young folks, sometimes becoming translators for their parents, and the parents losing some level of power over their role. It can become really challenging to negotiate all that and discover who you are in the process. Okay, I'm going to rush this one down. Young folks are dealing with, even though there is diversity, even though there's multiculturalism, the question of who are you really? Where are you really from? In the social work literature, there are anthologies of people who were born here and their parents were born here who are still, because they are a visible minority, or what we call visible minority in Canada, people of color. Who are you? Who are you really? Are you Canadian? Really? How many generations? We've got Canadians who are black who have been there for generations are still being asked if they're refugees, like the Somalis who came in the last 2 decades. That is a reality and a systemic barrier. So to conclude, I know Gulad's going to throw me off this stage. To conclude, there are everyday challenges. And integration is not a simple process. And it's compounded with internal and external issues that can sometimes really, having a culture home that is different from the society culture is enriching. And you can reach a bicultural identity that is really healthy and fulfilling. But to get there as a young person is a challenging steps. But it is doable. So all these things that I have mentioned that can be hindrances can also be help to your smooth integration. Cultural approaches and differences, you can actually in a position to take what is best of Somali culture and what is best of the host culture and combine it and become a bicultural person in that sense and develop a bicultural identity that is psychologically, emotionally, and mentally healthy. And try to overcome the powerlessness that you might see through the eyes of your parents who are refugees and still dealing with the protracted Somali civil war. And I'm going to end there. Thank you.